everyone. Just wanted to do this little intro before you see the actual video. As you can see from the title, the video is going to be the top 10 AJ Styles matches, as selected by me, my personal favorite AJ Styles matches, spanning throughout his whole career. And this is a video that I really wanted to do, and it's kind of personal to me because I really think highly of AJ Styles as a performer and as a professional wrestler. I do want to make it clear, though, that I did film this video on Sunday before the Royal Rumble happened. So there's a part of this video where I'm pleading with WWE to give us Shinsuke Nakamura versus AJ Styles. I made that plea without even really thinking that they were going to make that match official at the Royal Rumble, which now that I look back on, it's like, if they were going to make it official, they were probably going to do it at the Rumble, so I would have known in a couple of hours anyway. So, the plea is completely outdated, and this video was clearly filmed a few days ago. There was also a cameo from Alexa at one point, so be on the lookout for that. And I also make kind of a tasteless joke against New England Patriot fans, but, I'm a salty football fan, what can I say? Rather than reshoot the whole thing, I thought, you know what, I'll just post as is and edit it together, and hopefully you all like it anyway or just won't care. But in any case, hopefully you all enjoy the video. Here we go, the top 10 AJ Styles matches, again, as selected by me. Let me present this hypothetical situation. Let's say you could go back in time and talk to me, the wrestling fan I was back in the year 2000, and you could ask me, Patrick, young Patrick, who are your top 5 favorite wrestlers of all time? Now, for you to ask me that question back then, my answers would probably have been in no particular order, so don't, analyze, he likes Bret more than Shawn or anything like that. But in no particular order, my top 5 of all time would probably be Randy Macho Man Savage, who is probably the greatest combined talent of in-ring ability, look, promo, character, all of that. Randy Savage stands in a class almost all his own. There's no one else quite like him. Bret the Hitman Hart, who is probably my favorite in-ring worker of all time. The brilliant way he put his matches together was just second to none, and I just love watching the little nuances that he puts into the stories that he tells. Shawn Michaels, who probably has the best body of work of any wrestler, especially now that his career got a second run starting in 2002 and all the way through, and he added to his great resume of high caliber matches. I think Shawn probably has the greatest body of work of all time, especially through the innovation that he was able to provide through matches like the ladder match and Hell in a Cell and various other things. I would throw Ricky Steamboat up there, who not only is a terrific worker, but is probably the single greatest babyface in the history of the business. It is impossible to dislike Ricky Steamboat. Impossible. If you say you dislike the wrestling character Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, I'm assuming you're a heartless monster that probably roots for the Empire when you watch Star Wars. You're that type of person. You're probably a Tom Brady fan and a New England Patriot fan as well. No offense to the New England Patriot fans here that watch my channel. I know there are actually a couple, but anyway, Ricky Steamboat, probably the greatest babyface in the history of the business. And number 5 for me would be Sting, who is probably, for all the guys that are cut from that superhero cloth, the Hulk Hogans, the Ultimate Warriors, even Goldberg, John Cena, for those of you that like him. When you look at those superhero type of guys, I think Sting is the best one of that bunch because not only was he able to completely reinvent himself in the late 90s, as he went from being the superhero babyface that was the bright and colorful surfer dude to being the superhero babyface that was like the Crow and all dark and spooky and everything, and complete character change while also staying a superhero babyface. And that was pretty awesome that he was able to pull that off. But also, he was vulnerable enough to where if you put him in a match, it wasn't a 90% guarantee that he was going to win. So there was a lot more drama in his matches, like his matches with Vader, for example. So Sting was always someone I held in high esteem, as that it's like, wow, he's got all the appeal of a superhero character, but with a lot more drama because he doesn't win all the time. So he had a lot more intrigue to him than, say, the Hogans and the Warriors and the Cenas and those guys. So that would have been my top 5 all time in the year 2000. And once you pick your top 5, they kind of stay your top 5 forever. But if there's one guy that I would consider bumping up into my top 5 of all time over one of those 5 greats, it would be the phenomenal AJ Styles, a guy that I started watching regularly in 2004 when I started watching TNA. And right off the bat, it was the very first episode of Impact. He was in the main event. And when I say first episode of Impact, this was the first episode of when they were on FSN back in 2004. So we're talking early Impact days. Their first show after being on the weekly pay-per-view format for 2 years. AJ Styles was in the main event of that show. He was in a 4-way X Division match. And even in a 4-way X Division match that's kind of designed to be a flip-floppy spot fest car wreck type of match, AJ stood out. And it was one of those things I couldn't quite put my finger on. The way he carried himself and the way he looked, he just stood out above the rest in that match. And I could tell even then, it's like, there's something different about this guy. There's something special about him. I'm not sure what it is. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I wanted to watch him more, and I went back and watched his earlier stuff. I, continuously watched his work in TNA, where he just constantly grew and developed and evolved as a talent. I watched him win all sorts of championships in the tag division, X division, world title division. I watched him leave TNA and go to New Japan and reach all new main event heights for his character, and then I saw him debut with the WWE at this stage of his career, debut with the WWE in the Royal Rumble 2 years ago. And I'm actually filming this the day of Royal Rumble 2018, so it's strangely appropriate that I'm doing this because it's like the 2-year anniversary of his debut in the WWE. But throughout the entire time I've been watching him, I knew AJ Styles was something special. And he was a high-fly guy that could have really great main event caliber matches, and that isn't something that's always the case. Typically when you have like flip-floppy guys, there's that fear that they're just going to be the flip-flops and not really know how to put drama and excitement into their matches. Real excitement, not, oh hey, that guy jumped off a 20-foot scaffold, isn't that exciting? No, this is like legitimate drama, and AJ knew how to do that. And very early on, and it's something he's gotten better and better at as time goes on, to the point that if you look at a lot of those talents that were really big outside of the WWE talents in the mid-2000s, AJ's like the best one of the bunch because he's actually evolved the most and changed the most from that time period, where everybody else is still trying to do pretty much exactly the same thing they were doing back in 2005 or whatever. AJ is almost like a completely different talent from what he was back then, and he's still great. That's the thing. I mean, even at this stage of his career, AJ Styles is still one of the best guys in the WWE. And right now, as I'm filming this, he is the WWE World Heavyweight Championship holder. Sorry, I pulled a Scott Steiner there. And he is fully deserving of that role because he's just stellar. He's terrific. He's great. And I love watching the guy. He's one of those guys that can work with just about anybody and make him look like $1 million. He could work with guys his same size and have a good cruiserweight style match. He's a guy that could work with a monster that's twice his size and make it a great David versus Goliath match out of it. You can put him in Iron Man matches, ladder matches, Ultimate X matches, Steel Cage matches, main event matches with world titles on the line. He can do it all. And one thing that I would love to see, it was kind of like with CM Punk a few years ago. It's like, if there's one guy I would love to see main event at WrestleMania just because he deserves it, it's AJ Styles. I doubt it'll happen because there's talk that he's going to retire in 2019. And I don't think this is going to be the year because they want to do Brock versus Roman for whatever reason. But I would love to see, to me, it would be a huge validation for both him and myself as a supporter of his for so long to see him start off with humble beginnings, go to TNA, become the icon of that company, move from there, go to New Japan, shine there like no other, do really well in other organizations like ROH and various other places, and then go to the big leagues, the WWE, that place that he wasn't supposed to be good enough to go to, and go there and main event a WrestleMania. That would be awesome to me, and I would love to see it happen at some point. Like I said, I doubt it will. Although he's probably going to be in the title match at this year's WrestleMania. He won't close, but he will be in the WWE title match, which, if that's as good as he gets, I'll take it, because I never would have dreamed that AJ Styles would be the defending World Heavyweight Champion at a WrestleMania, or in the title picture at a WrestleMania. That's something I never thought would happen. To me, he would always be the guy outside of the WWE that I loved. And for him to come into the WWE, overcome all the hurdles that typically go hand in hand with guys that are coming from one organization coming into WWE, and do as well as he's done, has been astounding. And I am so happy to come here today. And throughout all the years that I've been watching AJ Styles, I got to sit here and list my top 10 favorite AJ Styles matches. So without further ado, let's kick off this phenomenal list. Bound for Glory 2006 was a huge show for TNA because it was really their first one on the road. They had done all the shows in Nashville, and that was kind of their base for a while. Then they moved to Orlando and did all their shows from Orlando. This was their first show outside of their comfort zone. And I think doing this show, especially the first time, gave it a very different atmosphere and was overall a more exciting show because of it. It's a shame that TNA wasn't able to maintain that success, but hey, what can you do? But the standout match on the show, on a show that had quite a few really good matches on it and was exciting almost from start to finish, AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels defending the NWA Tag Team Championships against the Latin American Exchange, Homicide and Hernandez in 6 Sides of Steel. This was the culmination of a feud that had been going on for a few months after several matches and several title changes between them. They had just had the Ultimate X match the month before, which is also a great match. Go check that one out. But this match was a perfect setup for a steel cage match. It's like, it's a feud ender. We're going to settle the score one way or the other. Steel cage, brutality, anything goes. Just watch it all develop. And it ended up being a very violent, action-packed match that stole the show. I'll always remember that bit where they were doing the Tower of Doom spot, and AJ kind of hung onto the roof of the cage, and kind of broke up the Tower of Doom. But when Hernandez turned around, he was like, "Where's AJ?" AJ jumps off the top of the cage and hits him with a crossbody off the top. And one of those amazing things that AJ could do, you know, he's phenomenal. And that was something he was always very good at, was timing those big high spots and making them seem more epic instead of just doing a spot for the sake of doing a spot. But yeah, I thought this match was great. It was violent. LAX ended up winning the tag titles here, so AJ came up on the losing end. But as far as quality goes, this is my personal favorite from what was really a very heated and intense rivalry. Now, this match right here is one of the more talked about matches in TNA's history and is considered by many to be the #1 greatest match in TNA history. I personally have always felt like it's a tad overrated. It was never like one of my favorite matches. Like, if I were going to list my favorite matches from 2005, there were probably going to be a handful of matches I would have put above it. But the Unbreakable 3-way between Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, and Christopher Daniels was an excellent main event and was significant for a few reasons. It was the first time that the X Division title got to close a TNA pay-per-view. TNA pay-per-view meaning the standard 3-hour pay-per-views, not their weekly shows. And it was a showcase for 3 guys, 3 very diverse talents, 3 very unique talents. The Ring General and Christopher Daniels, the high-powered brute Samoa Joe that could hang with the high flyers, and then the always reliable, always phenomenal AJ Styles, who could work well in just about any situation you put him in, as long as it's not an MMA match. No Surrender 2009 comes to mind. Or was that 2008? I think it was 2008. So whichever year he wrestled Frank Trigg. I think it was 2008. But anyway, this match was stellar. They were given the closing spot, and all 3 guys brought their A-games in terms of bringing their own unique styles to the mix. Daniels was clearly kind of the heel in the situation, and Joe was the silent killer, which I just made him sound like a fart, but whatever. He was the power guy in there with two high flyers, and AJ was the standard high-flying babyface that ultimately got the win, winning the X Division title in this match. And this was also the match that was viewed by Spike TV executives and was a contributing factor in kind of winning TNA over. Even though they'd already gotten the deal with Spike TV, this was kind of a contributing factor of kind of getting into Spike TV's good graces. Oh, how that did not last. But, oh, God, I wish TNA had stuck around and been successful, but a bunch of mistakes happened. But anyway, this match was not a mistake. I thought it was really good. Very excellent showcase for three great talents that were really in some ways at their best. Like Samoa Joe was at his very best at this point, I think. And just great stuff all around from three stellar talents. You can't ask for anything more than that. Next up is yet another tag team match, one for the NWA Tag Team Championships. AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels getting their last chance to win the NWA tag titles from America's Most Wanted, the duo of Chris Harris and James Storm. TNA's original superstar tag team, and really was kind of the as much as AJ Styles was the icon of the X Division in the early years, America's Most Wanted was the icon of the tag division in the early years. So this match was really like the ultimate battle of the TNA originals, where you had AJ, Daniels, and then America's Most Wanted, who were the heels at this point. They were aligned with Jeff Jarrett, and AJ and Daniels had been pursuing them for months. After the feud with Samoa Joe over the X title had been ended and Joe had pretty much become top X Division guy, AJ and Daniels ultimately put their differences aside and moved on and fought in the tag team ranks. They had the match with AMW on New Year's Eve, I believe. Had a couple more matches on pay-per-views and on Impacts, and then this was like their last chance to finally win the titles. One roadblock that kept getting in their way was Gail Kim, who was in America's Most Wanted's corner. And AJ and Daniels finally found a way to neutralize her by bringing in the very mannish-looking woman, Sorelda, to rough Gail Kim up and get her out of the way. That all worked from a storytelling perspective, and this match also had kind of this old-school, classic NWA type of feel to it. Again, it's all simple stuff. It's like you have these baby faces, you want to see them win the belts, they overcome the odds, and then they win the belts. It's all very good stuff, and America's Most Wanted, I think, unfortunately, has kind of become forgotten by modern fans. I think most people remember Beer Money as being the best team in TNA history, and they're not wrong, the fans that say that, but I think America's Most Wanted was very good in those early years and deserves a lot of credit. They actually took part in my personal favorite match in TNA history, which would be the Six Sides of Steel match against Triple X, which also involved Christopher Daniels from Turning Point 2004, but that'll probably show up on another top 10 at some point. But yeah, I thought this match was great. It had an old school feel to it. It had the satisfaction of the babyfaces winning, had all the drama and all the action you could possibly want out of it. I was just very entertained with it all around. January 4th, 2010 was a significant night for pro wrestling. TNA Impact did their trial run on Monday nights and went head-to-head with Monday Night Raw. It was the debut of Hulk Hogan for TNA Impact Wrestling. On Monday Night Raw, they had the return of Bret Hart as he confronted Shawn Michaels, which is literally all I remember from that episode of Raw. Just the Bret Hart stuff and his interaction with Vince and Shawn and all that. That's literally all I remember. From TNA Impact, most of what I remember is Hulk Hogan's debut, which was the big thing that they were selling, and he was going to be the new authority figure for the company. Oh boy, did that not work, to say the least. But the real standout thing from TNA Impact was its main event. AJ Styles, the defending TNA World Heavyweight Champion, taking on Kurt Angle with the gold on the line. AJ and Angle had worked with each other quite a few times prior to this and even after this. Typically worked very well with each other. I remember the Last Man Standing match they had in 2008. That was amazing. I remember the match they had on the Go Home show before Bound for Glory '09, which went to a time limit draw and was an amazing match as well. But this match had a lot of eyeballs on it because it was the largest audience that Impact ever had. I remember the rating they did that night was far beyond anything that they'd ever done before. And it was the main event to a big show on a big night, and AJ and Angle delivered. Some people criticized this match for being kind of finisher festy, and it was to a point, but they did a lot of cool things with it that made it work for me. One spot I'll always remember is AJ Styles going for the Pele and Angle catching him in the ankle lock. I thought that was a very cool spot and so perfect for both guys. I'm surprised it took them that many matches to work it into one of their routines, but it was an excellent main event. From a wrestling action standpoint, it was the best part of both Raw and Impact that night, easily, hands down. It was the one standout match that I can recall from both shows. The only other match I remember is the X Division Thunderdome or Superdome or whatever that stupid thing was, where a Homicide couldn't get out of the cage, and it kind of fucked up the whole finish. But yeah, Angle and AJ, they typically worked well with each other. This match was no exception. This match was excellent. AJ Styles got the win following a Styles Clash 450 springboard 450 splash combo, and got praised by Hulk Hogan after the match was done. So it looked like TNA might be okay after that match was done. It's like, all right, at least they ended on a high note, and maybe this will be the start of great things for them. It wasn't, but this match was great anyway. The Ultimate X match is kind of TNA's signature match. No other company quite has a match like this. The high wire spectacle that is the Ultimate X, kind of the next step in the evolution of the ladder match. And unfortunately, TNA's had a bad habit of overdoing this match to where I think the first one was in 2003, and I think they've done the match like 40 some odd times, which once you've done it that many times in such a short span, it's like you really took a match that should have been your Hell in a Cell or your Elimination Chamber or something like it, and you made it not special by doing it too many times. And a lot of the ones that have come in recent years have just kind of been fairly ordinary, and I don't know if it's guys not really knowing how to work with the high wire match or whatever, but it's a very tricky match to do. The best one, by far, that really captured the idea of this high wire spectacle was the one from Final Resolution 2005 with the X Division Gold on the line. X Division champion Petey Williams defending against Chris Sabin and the phenomenal AJ Styles, his two top contenders prior to this. And this was kind of the final burn-off to that whole series of matches. And the end result was really the embodiment of what Ultimate X is supposed to be. There's so many crazy moments. You could almost turn this match in of itself into a Ultimate X highlight reel. There's that famous spot where AJ got drop kicked as he was climbing, he was shimmying across, and he got drop kicked in the legs, and he kind of did like a front flip and landed on his back, which AJ said in interviews is like, I almost died on that spot. I almost didn't get my body all the way over, and I could have come down on my head. But so yeah, it's a very dangerous match to do, but so much action in this, but also not at the expense of the story, which I also think is good, with Petey being this sneaky heel champion that finds ways to connive his way into the gold, and AJ getting injured, and Sabin being the king of Ultimate X because he had won the most Ultimate X's prior to this. So he was kind of the king of this match, and AJ kept getting hurt. There was the aforementioned flip dive that didn't go well for him. There was the spot where he got his arm caught in one of the scaffolds, and it looked like he injured his arm. He took a Canadian Destroyer, so AJ really took a pounding in this, but they really came up with this creative finish where Petey and Sabin were in the center of the X, waiting to pull the title down, the title belt, and AJ, with one arm, kind of jumped from the top turnbuckle, dove across the ring, and slapped the belt down and was able to nab it and come down with the belt and ultimately win the match. Like I said, I think this match is stellar. If you're a fan of Ultimate X, this match is must-see. I think it's far and away the best one. And a great display for AJ Styles, because this was his second Ultimate X, not his first. The first Ultimate X I ever saw, actually, was AJ's first. It was the fourth one, him versus Kazarian and Michael Shane in what amounted to largely being a...
I'm not finding anything for that.
God damn it, Alexa, you ruin everything. But anyway, ignore her. That match, Ultimate X 4, was my first experience with Ultimate X, but it was largely just a handicap match, so I think this one really captured what Ultimate X is supposed to be all about, and a great win for AJ, and just a great match for everybody involved, and one of AJ's crowning accomplishments. On NWA TNA's second weekly pay-per-view in mid-2002, we got the first ever X Division Championship match, the kickoff of the X Division, and the match that would kind of be the standard bearer for what type of action one could expect out of the X Division. It was newcomer AJ Styles taking on Low-Ki, Psychosis, and the legend, the in-ring general Jerry Lynn, in a four-way double elimination match. So it's really not a four-way match. It was more of it like a kind of a round-robin type of thing where two guys would start, one would lose, and then another person would jump in. And that cycle would keep going until everybody had been eliminated twice with only one left standing. And, which is a very unique match structure, and I'm a little surprised TNA never did it again, because it was actually a really cool match, I felt like, but on the same token, it allows this match to stand out more in its own history, because it's the only one of its kind, but, this yielded a strong series of matches that, again, exemplified what the X Division would be all about. Low-Ki had a shining performance, but really the real lifeblood of this match and what made it so classic for me was the closing series between AJ Styles and Jerry Lynn. Jerry Lynn got an elimination on AJ, and then it closed with them, with Jerry Lynn having suffered no eliminations and AJ being down one. So it was one fall to a finish for Jerry, and AJ was going to have to beat him twice to win the X Division title, which he did in a action-packed match that really reminded me of something like a Savage Steamboat, or something akin to that. It was just pure wrestling action at its finest, with the right amount of drama to make it work. It's like, oh god, I hope this new guy, AJ Styles, I hope he beats Jerry Lynn. I hope he gets the two falls and ultimately wins, which he did. AJ Styles finished off Jerry Lynn, getting the second fall with the spiral tap, and becoming TNA's first ever X Division champion, something that he would become kind of the king of, and one of his major accomplishments, the first of many in TNA. He was the icon of the X Division, he was the icon of the company as a whole, but the X Division was kind of his baby, and this was the starting point of that, of AJ becoming the first true great X Division superstar for that company. And the title win was great. The match was fantastic. Jerry Lynn made AJ look like $1 million, and they worked so well together because Jerry was this seasoned veteran who could work well with just about anybody. And very much like what he did for Rob Van Dam back in ECW, he helped AJ cover up for any deficiencies that he had, because AJ was still young and somewhat inexperienced. Not fully inexperienced, but, he needed a little bit more seasoning. But putting him with Jerry basically made him look like a megastar. It just made him look like, oh god, AJ's one of the best out there, and he's working with Jerry, so they just work beautifully with each other. And I think Jerry Lynn deserves a lot of credit for what AJ ultimately became, because he really helped give AJ a strong series of matches to really get his foot in the door and really establish himself as one of the greatest stars of the generation. At TNA's first ever Against All Odds pay-per-view event in 2005, AJ Styles defended the X Division title against Christopher Daniels in a 30-minute Iron Man match. A match that is probably the best 30-minute Iron Man match I've ever seen. Iron Man matches are very tough to do, whether it be an hour or 30 minutes or whatever. With 30 minutes, there's a tendency to maybe do too many falls too quickly, and it just feels rushed. With 60 minutes, it has a tendency to drag. So Iron Man matches, they're very tough to do. I thought AJ and Christopher Daniels did an outstanding job in this. And again, all the great X Division action they did not come at the expense of the story, with Daniels being the desperate guy, the heel, trying to finally win the X Division title and prove that he's better than the guy that TNA handpicked, and AJ being the honorable defending champion that was going to try and defeat him in kind of the ultimate showcase of endurance and athletic ability, the Iron Man match. And Daniels had a lead for a good portion of the match. It was 1-0. Then AJ scored a quick fall towards the end to tie it up. And then, in the closing seconds, a bloodied AJ Styles gets locked in the Koji clutch, which looked sick as hell at the time. Because I'd seen the move applied before in various other matches, but never, certainly never in WWE or WCW. And to see it here was like, whoa, that looks cool. And AJ, with the blood running down his face and everything, and locked in this hold as the timer ran down to 0, I thought AJ had lost. I thought he passed out, and I thought Daniels had just won the title. And typically, I don't like it when an Iron Man match ends with somebody locked in a submission hold, because it looks like a cheap attempt to just drain the clock. And it doesn't really, because it just doesn't work for me, because they almost never tap at the end, and it just looks silly to me. It looks like they're just killing time before the end of the match, and it, instead of enhancing the drama, to me it decreases the drama. But because AJ had the crimson mask and looked like he was unconscious, I thought Daniels had just won the title, so that wasn't even on my mind. I was like, oh my god, Daniels just won. Turns out he didn't. AJ was not. The referee had determined that AJ was not unconscious and therefore did not lose the title, which forced the authority figure at the time, Dusty Rhodes, to send the match into overtime at Daniels' demand, where AJ was able to get the Styles Clash and get the win not long after. So, excellent encounter between these two great rivals. I've mentioned Daniels a couple of times in this list. Him and AJ kind of shadowed each other throughout their careers, going all the way back even before their TNA days, and worked as opponents, they worked as partners, they typically worked great with each other. It was one of those matches that they did too many times, but this was their first major TNA match on a pay-per-view with the X Division title on the line, and the end results were fantastic in my opinion. I thought that this match was great, and both guys, it's one of the best matches for both guys, easily. Now we're finally getting into AJ's New Japan work, which were some of the best matches he ever had. And I'm actually going to cover his final major match with New Japan Pro Wrestling. At Wrestle Kingdom 10, AJ Styles challenged Shinsuke Nakamura for the IWGP Intercontinental Championship match. A match that was the swan song for both men, as they both went on to WWE soon after this. And AJ would go straight, like he was in the Royal Rumble just a few weeks later. Nakamura would go through NXT first. But this match was, and I talked about it at the time through some of my videos, the major stars that New Japan was boasting at the time at the main event level were Tanahashi, Okada, AJ, and Nakamura. And I'd pretty much seen all the pairings up to this point except for AJ and Nakamura. So Wrestle Kingdom 10, both men are leaving. Let's get that match, before they both are gone. And I thought that they absolutely tore the house down. On any other show, this would have been the match of the night. They also, the main event of this show was Tanahashi versus Okada, with Okada defeating Tanahashi for the belt. So it's kind of like, God, which match was better? I don't know. That's a tough one. It's a toss-up, but both matches were amazing, and this one was too. And it was so great to see these two work with each other, because AJ, who one of his best attributes, one of his best abilities is that he can sell like crazy, and the way he sold some of Nakamura's offense was insane and really made it look like it hurt. And it's like, you can have the best offense on the planet, but if the guy's not selling for you, then it doesn't have any impact. And AJ made Nakamura look brutal and vicious, and I thought this match was outstanding and a perfect send-off for both guys. They obviously bumped fists after the match was done. Nakamura got the win, but both of them you realized how great both of them were by the time it was done. Like I said, outstanding match. On any other show, it would have been match of the night without any question, but it is one of the best matches of AJ Styles' career, and it was nice to see him get this match out there. One last great stellar classic before leaving New Japan and going to the WWE. Now, my personal favorite AJ Styles match during his tenure in New Japan Pro Wrestling came at the hands of him working with another guy who is developing a body of work that is going to force me to put him up there as one of my all-time favorites. The Rainmaker, Kazuchika Okada, at Dominion 2015. These two main evented the show. AJ was the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, the leader of the Bullet Club, and Okada was on his road to redemption after losing to Tanahashi at Wrestle Kingdom earlier that year. Okada went through the feud with Bad Luck Fale and various other things to get to this point, to face AJ Styles for the title, to redeem himself and win back the championship. And the main event these two had was absolutely outstanding. Great work. I mean, it's probably my two favorite wrestlers in the world right now in 2018, having a major main event at a major show and delivering like nobody's business. This match was amazing work. And, when you think about the matches that Okada had with Tanahashi and the matches he had with Omega, Okada's had some really stellar work, but I think that this match with AJ is really high up there as well and deserves even as much praise as it got at the time. I think it deserves even more credit. The counter sequence towards the end had me on the edge of my seat when I was watching it. And the action throughout was amazing. It had all the feel of a major main event fight, and all the action that you would expect out of these two. It was an exciting, dramatic, damn near perfect World Heavyweight Championship match, and a clear indicator of how talented both men were. Okada would ultimately win the belt here. This wasn't the start of his record-setting reign, which is currently going on now. He would lose the belt to Naito a little while after this, and then win it back. And that's the reign he's currently on right now. But this match he had here with AJ Styles, really indicative of what New Japan delivers. And that is stellar, high-caliber main events with stakes and drama and context. You care about everything going on. You care about the guys. And like myself, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time watching this. And amazing match between these two. And as big a fan as I was of AJ Styles, I became an even bigger fan of Okada after this match. So that's kind of, I talked about with Jerry Lynn, really giving AJ that rub to help establish him. And not that Okada needed it. He was already great at this point, but I was still kind of new to New Japan. This match with AJ, one of my personal favorites, and to watch him have this type of match with Okada, really raised Okada's stock in my eyes as a newcomer to the product. So, AJ, I mean, those are the best situations where not only will you look good, but if you can make the other guy look even better, I mean, that's some great work right there. And love this match. It's great. It's one of the best matches for both guys. It's a masterpiece, in my opinion. And my number one favorite AJ Styles match of all time was his X Division title match against Samoa Joe from Turning Point 2005. The match that was billed as title versus streak, with Samoa Joe's undefeated streak coming into play as well. Now, why is this my favorite AJ Styles match? I mean, it was just so well done from all angles. The motivation of both characters, with AJ wanting to maintain a code of honor and dignity within the X Division, and Samoa Joe being the asshole that kind of breaks all the rules and injured Daniels just because he felt like it, and various other things. So you kind of had like, AJ being like this samurai type character that was trying to uphold honor and justice within his own little club, and Samoa Joe being the guy that breaks all the rules and just breaks everything and destroys everything that the division is supposed to stand for. So you had an interesting conflict. You had a contrast of styles, pun intended, with AJ being the smaller, high-flying guy and Joe being the big, thuggish brute. And whenever you can get something of two very talented guys with distinct opposing styles, it typically makes for a great match. And I think AJ and Joe worked very well with each other, especially with AJ as kind of like the underdog and Joe as kind of the thuggish brute. I think they meshed together perfectly most times they worked with each other, and this was their best work with each other, I think. The drama, the hard-hitting action, that awesome moment where AJ started to fire back by kicking out of Joe's moves at a 1 count and made his big comeback against Samoa Joe after getting the ever-living dog crap kicked out of him for so long. He got his mouth busted open and Joe kicked the crap out of him, and just everything Joe did in this match looked like it hurt. And it only made AJ that much more of an underdog, and where you just kind of wanted to see him come back and win it. And it was just a very exciting match that embodied everything the X Division was supposed to be about, which is that not about weight limits, it's about no limits, and just high level, high stakes, pure blood and guts, athletic displays in excellent championship matches. And I think this match exemplified the very best that the X Division had to offer, and was the best work of AJ Styles personally, and of Samoa Joe as well. I'd probably say this is my favorite Joe match as well. Although he had a couple of matches in Ring of Honor that were really good, that were excellent as well. So, but AJ, when I think of AJ Styles, this is the match that instantly pops in my mind. This just shows off everything that's great about AJ and everything that he brought to the table as a worker and as a performer, and why he is as special a talent as he is. And I have no problems, no qualms calling this my all-time favorite AJ Styles match. Now, you may notice that this list did not include any of AJ's work in the WWE. That was not by design. That was just kind of how it played out. It really just speaks to the level of quality of AJ's body of work, that you really exhaust all 10 spots before you even get to his time in the WWE. And he's had some really good matches in WWE. His matches with Cena, his TLC match with Dean Ambrose, his matches with Roman Reigns, which are still, in my opinion, Roman's best matches, his match with Brock Lesnar, his match with Shane at WrestleMania, which was way better than anybody thought it could be. And there are a bunch of really good TNA matches that I left off too, and I didn't even cover his work in Ring of Honor. And in New Japan, he had that match with Kota Ibushi where the finish was he caught him out of the Phoenix Splash, which I don't know how you do that. Excuse my phone just went off. I still don't understand how he was physically able to do that, and hit the Styles Clash for the win, but that match was excellent. And AJ has just been a standard of excellence throughout his career, and getting the chance to sit here, talk about some of the highlights of his career was an honor for me. And love the guy, love watching the guy. I think he's great. I think he's truly something special in the wrestling business, and someone that I will be a fan of his as long as he can still perform at such a high level. And AJ Styles, to me, doesn't have to take a backseat to anybody. I think he is, as he says he is, absolutely phenomenal.